I thought I had a perfect wife until I discovered her twin. Together, they staged the illusion of marriage, while one of them was disgustingly getting pounded on camera by strangers for cash. I'm not using real names. No set feels right for what happened, so I'll pick the ones that sit still when I reach for them. I'm Daniel. My wife, my ex, is Mia. Her twin is Lena. The private investigator is Calder. My coworker is Ethan. And the friend who keeps showing up in the margins is Harper. When I met Mia, I thought Providence had slipped and dropped a miracle in my lap. She was 22, I was 23, and we were both unfashionably patient. We dated like people who believed time meant something. Long walks, long talks, and longer pauses when the right words refused to arrive. No rushing intimacy. No performance. Values that made our friends crack jokes until they realized we were serious, and then they just shook their heads like we were quaint. 2 years like that. We learned each other by lamplight and bus ride in grocery aisles. We compared childhood memories until they overlapped in strange ways. Her stories always neat at the edges, mine frayed. My parents, sentiment-resistant people who would rather repair than replace, but never gush, liked her immediately. She slid into my small circle like a missing puzzle piece. 2 childhood friends now married. And Harper, a force of nature with a calendar for a spine, a person who set goals like Karen's, and then quietly reached them. Even Harper, who could sniff weakness like rain, treated Mia as if she'd been part of the blueprint all along. Mia kept her past tidy. The short version: parents dead in a car crash when she was a teenager, an aunt in another town took her in. A quiet reset. No photographs on the walls, no boxes of old notes, no ex-friends who drifted into our home with messy stories. I called it resilience. It felt clean, safe, adult that we moved in together after 2 years. Still no intimacy until engagement. Her boundary, my respect. I proposed under a sky so clear it felt like a ceiling you could tap. She cried like glass just poured. Small wedding, big vows. We planned kids at 30, maybe 32. We had an apartment that looked like minimalism had a baby with Pinterest. Meal prep in labeled containers, a shared calendar, passwords exchanged as a gesture of trust. It felt like competence. It felt like we were doing life the right way. A phrase that means nothing until it fails. Before the crack, there were little postcards from a possible future. The road trip to the coast where she made up silly names for the towns, and I pretended to hate it. The Sunday mornings when she hummed instead of speaking. The way she would touch door frames with 2 fingers like she was measuring a house she'd someday own. I filed it all under ordinary joy and thought that was the job. Notice, repeat, grow old. If the story stopped there, you'd accuse me of humble bragging and click away. So here's where the veneer chips. The first crack came from Ethan at the office. Ethan, who never gossiped because he was never paying enough attention to have anything good. We were the last ones in after a spreadsheet marathon that murdered our posture. He cleared his throat, careful, like he'd practiced in an empty room. You and Mia, you two are solid, right? Like, trust falls solid. I laughed because anything else would have been too sharp. That's a strange opener. He grimaced. I know. It's not a trap. I might be completely wrong. If I am, pretend I didn't. Say this. He waited for me to nod, then kept going. I've been tinkering with a little face-matching thing. Open source embeddings, nothing fancy. It's a stupid, grab everything kind of program. Lately, it's been throwing me the same face over and over. Looks a lot like Mia. The floor didn't drop. It tilted half a degree. The kind of shift you can talk yourself out of if you want to keep sleeping. You're wrong, I said, and I was talking to both of us. I hope so, he replied. The model's dumber than a bag of rocks. It finds half the planet. I'm not giving you an answer. I'm giving you a method if you ever want one. He showed me the method, not the results. No link, no clip, no lurid glee. Just the scaffolding. Gather varied photos, generate vectors, compare against a large messy index, triage by hand. The machine is a toddler that puts anything in its mouth. The adult has to decide what's food. It'll spit out 100 maybes. He said, 99 will be wrong. The last one will still be a maybe. The only way through is slow. That night, the seed he planted didn't sprout so much as hum. Harmless memories developed a question mark. Not smoking guns, more like a collection of smudges. Mia liked her coffee black, or said she did. Sometimes I caught her bracing after a sip, like a dare gone on too long. I'd offer milk. She'd smile too brightly and say no. I logged it as quirk, a datum of no consequence. She kept two playlists labeled Sunday. One was piano and breathing room folk. The other pulsed like a club at 3 a.m. She toggled between them on identical mornings. I called it Weather in Your Head. She called me cute and changed the song. There was a faint scar above her left eyebrow, half a fingernail. Some mornings it went missing under makeup or memory. I kissed the place where it should be and didn't make a joke. She had two at-home selves. One wore oversized sweaters and wool socks, hair in a loose knot, face bare. The other wore fitted loungewear, brows aligned, glossed lips, like she might need to be photographed between episodes. I told myself that comfort, like weather, comes in different seasons. Calendar ghosts wandered our shared app. A dentist appointment moved and then moved back without a notification. A reminder she swore she said evaporated. A duplicate dinner. Event appeared, then vanished. We blamed syncing. We kept living. I slept fine until I didn't. 2 days after Ethan's nudge, on a lunch break with bad fluorescent lighting and better intentions, I did the thing I'd promised myself I wouldn't. I ran the method. I baptized it with a noble name, closure, and held my breath while it did what it does. Open source face search is both a miracle and a clown. I fed it a dozen photos, smiling, neutral, hat, no hat, sunlight, kitchen light. It returned a parade of cheekbones and hair colors, the uncanny nearness of strangers. Page after page of almosts. Then, on a late page, the first still that made my spine pay attention. The jawline lived in the right neighborhood. The eyes didn't blink out. Of rhythm with my memory. The mouth tugged into a quick, nervous smile I knew like a lyric. The context around the face was unmistakable. The cold halo of a ring light, a hotel-neutral headboard, titles and tags I won't repeat. The implication was loud. I told myself I was seeing what I feared. I told myself pixels lie. I clicked anyway. A creator page opened. Paywalled, popular, prolific. Stage name, try hard. Thumbnails blurred at the edges, brazen at the center. The categories span the internet's worst buffet. I'm not detailing any of it. You already know too much of the menu just by being alive online. What mattered was the face, which appeared across enough clips to shake the scaffolding of my certainty. I closed the laptop like it had tried to bite me. I went home and made dinner with careful hands. I asked Mia, lighter than air, random, someone at work mentioned seeing a person who looked like you somewhere online. Doppelganger. Territory. She didn't flinch. She gave me a statistic. There's research on that, you know? Most people have several near matches in the world, depending on population clusters. She smiled. Maybe there's a shadow me out there making terrible decisions. We laughed. We slept. I watched the shape of her in the dark and tried to get my breathing to sync with hers like it used to. At 2 in the morning I was up, because faith without evidence is a bridge I can't stay on forever. I did the ugly thing. Screen grabs lined up against wedding photos, candids from hikes, the look in her eyes when she wanted to be anywhere but the conversation she was in. I paid attention to micro features I'd never named. A darker fleck, crescenting in her left iris, earlobe asymmetry, the geography of freckles along the shoulder. Compression lies. Angles lie. Lighting lies. Certainty at 2:17 a.m. is counterfeit, but it spins like the real thing. In the morning I called a private investigator. I packaged the act as sanity insurance. Either I'd owe Mia a shattering apology, or I'd owe myself courage. Calder was not what TV promised. He looked like a former math teacher who kept the patience and lost the chalk dust. Soft voice, shoes made for walking instead of declaring. I said subscription platform and creator, and he nodded without judgment like he was measuring angles on grief. He asked for timelines, addresses, permission to follow the money in our household, and permission to speak to Mia's aunt. Not a witch hunt, he said. A context hunt. While he worked, I pretended to be normal. I failed politely. I checked Mia's phone once while she showered, which felt like I crawled into a version of myself I'd promised never to be. We shared passwords, after all. The phone held nothing incriminating. No vault apps, no secret folders. Clean as a showroom kitchen. A clean kitchen can still hide a knife. I took personal time from work under the banner of reset. In practice, I drifted through Mia's days like a ghost with a clipboard. Home to the boutique where she consulted on luxury lingerie, an irony that writes its own paragraph. Back. Home again. She moved through routines with him-like precision. Breakfast exactly, commute exactly, kindness by habit. I couldn't follow her into work. Too many colleagues knew my face. So I learned the rhythm of her exits and returns instead. If there was a neon second life, it didn't leave footprints in daylight. A week went nowhere. Another did the same. Suspicion without proof is erosion. It wears you down grain by grain. Then Calder called. I need an hour in your space, he said. No interruptions. I'll bring paper. I won't show you a maybe. He arrived with a folder that felt heavier than it was. He started with what wouldn't make me throw him out. After her parents' accident, he said, Mia moved in with an aunt. You know that. What you don't know is that there was a twin, Lena. Bureaucracy split them. Different guardianships. Different addresses. They remained in contact and, together, reinvented themselves. He had proof I didn't know paper could hold. Enrollment records, name changes, a breadcrumb trail through agencies you forget exist. He'd spoken to the aunt. She is careful, he said. She didn't confess. But when I laid down facts, she confirmed as much as she had to. He slid the next pile over. Not videos. Banking. Payment processors, merchant codes, account structures. Incoming payments to accounts controlled by Lena, legally Lena. Outgoing transfers to a shared discretionary account. Expenditures that painted a neon map, hotels in Amsterdam's red light district, car services in Prague, club entries in Miami, anonymous suites in Vegas. Travel that matched the release cadence on the creator page. Travel that mirrored Mia's girls' weekends. He wasn't gloating. His mouth held a line like he wished the math refused to add up. They built a Tulane life, he said. One daylight. One midnight. The rewards pooled. The risks did not. How do you know, I asked, that they didn't just keep the lanes separate? That Mia didn't keep her hands clean? He nodded like he had been waiting for the question. He handed me a report from a visual forensics consultant. No content, no porn, just geometry of faces. You can fake many things, he said. Angles, cosmetics, hair, even general resemblance. But consistent iris microfeatures across time are stubborn. Under certain lighting, your wife's left iris shows a small comet pattern of darker flecks. In a meaningful subset of those clips, that comet appears. Not always. Enough. Add ear helix shape, molar spacing, and shoulder freckle. Constellations, and the probability that the same person appears in both sets, your life and those videos, stops being comfortable. The room hummed like an ungrounded wire. I wanted a simpler villain than reality. What about deep fakes? I asked. Face swap overlays? We pulled random samples, he said. Many are raw. Some are cropped and color graded, but the biometrics remain consistent, including slight lens distortions unique to certain cheap cameras used repeatedly. The timeline lines up with travel. The money lines up with travel. He showed me more. Burner email threads linked by sloppy recoveries. 2 numbers that showed up in too many account forms. The messages didn't say, I'll be you Tuesday, because real conspiracies rarely announce themselves so neatly. Instead, logistics, hair appointments, lock codes, reminders about a green sweater at a specific dry cleaner. Mundane, domestic. Damning. I asked the question you ask when the ground is moving. Was Lena ever in my home instead of Mia? He didn't guess. He gave me a list of anomalies by date. The too tight hug from my mother, sent wrong by a degree. The night Mia diced a tomato like a chef when my Mia always yielded the knife. The repeated question about an ex's last name she'd once claimed to forget. The swimsuit 10 lines that didn't match any of the straps we owned. Each item, alone is nothing. Together they sketch a face you wish you didn't recognize. What do I do? I asked. Movies promise a clean decision tree. Real life offers fog. You choose your exit, Calder said. Quiet, loud, or not at all. If you want leverage, you gather and say little. If you want peace, you go. If you want justice, he paused on the word like it might break you. Document and burn carefully. I told myself I was a quiet exit person. Then life, rude as always, revised the script. Mia beat me to the confession, if that's the right word. She came home with eyes pre-bright, shoulders ready to collapse into arms she hoped were still safe. Either the aunt warned her or instincts did. She said sister like it tasted like metal. She gave me the story shaped to fit absolution. 2 girls split by tragedy and system errors. Two promises never to abandon one another. Two paths chosen under duress. She said she changed her name because paperwork is cruel to orphans. She said she hid Lena because people judge. She said she never cheated. I always had the real her, where it mattered. She said she had cut contact because she couldn't stand the videos anymore. That shame stuck to her even at a distance that a crying person you love can sell you anything. I wanted to be sold. I held her. We made a truce with our bodies. We slept like the world had not moved an inch. 2 days later, Calder returned with the part of the story that doesn't fit inside tears. Early burner-to-burner messages, 16. And 17, a manifesto in code. One of us plays house. One of us plays night. We both eat. Not evil exactly. Cold. Strategic. I don't know which is worse. Resolve arrived like bruising, slow, spreading, painful to press, but undeniable. If I stayed, I'd be a prop. If I left quietly, the next person would inherit the same set with better lighting. I left loudly but cleanly. With a lawyer who didn't flinch at the word fraud, we prepared papers that said impersonation and meant it. Calder compiled a dossier with dates, money flows, biometrics, and the aunt's careful confirmations. I handed sanitized copies to the people who needed to know: Mia's aunt, my parents, my two childhood friends, Harper, Mia's manager, who needed context for why emergency leave was about to happen. I sent a distilled package to the platform's compliance team. Even they have lines: consent, identity, billing. Accounts that blur those get closed. I didn't do any of this from some high tower of principle. I did it because consequences are the only language some architectures understand. I also did it because my hands were shaking and I needed them to do something that built instead of broke. The divorce sliced clean once the word impersonation sat on the table. Assets sorted themselves like iron filings. Names stepped back from each other. Keys relocated to new hooks. Silence fell like snow. 6 months later, I came home to windows spiderwebbed into silence. Nothing stolen. Just a message written in shatter. The cameras failed me. The police filed a report. I don't know it was them. I know it was them. Grief after betrayal doesn't look like movie grief. It looks like forgetting how to eat and then remembering too much. It looks like standing in a grocery aisle staring at soup labels until a stranger asks if you're okay. It looks like sleeping on the couch because the bed learned too many stories you no longer believe. Why people kept me stitched together. My two childhood friends took turns convincing me to leave the house. Harper, who had always moved through life like a comet pulling her own tide, became quiet in my orbit. She brought soup without comments. She texted me links to boring articles on purpose. When I tried to spiral, she talked to me about deadlines, about a coworker's dog, about anything that wasn't a twin or a lie. Normalcy as rope. If this is the part where you expect me to say Harper and I fell into each other the next week, that's not the story. She kept a line drawn in chalk. She stood on her side of it until I could stand on mine. Online, because I had started narrating as a way to not drown, strangers pointed out something I refused to say. Harper sounds like she cares. Your friend knows how to love. I bristled and deflected. I didn't trust my own hunger yet. Wanting is dangerous when you've just watched your house collapse. 4 months after the ban, after the lawyers, after the glass, I wrote an update that said, I'm learning to be okay. People asked, inevitably, about Harper. I was vague. I was protecting a tenderness I could feel waking up, something I didn't want to expose to the draft too early. Harper made the first unambiguous move, and even then, it was more kindness than pursuit. After a late coffee, milk for her, the way she likes it, which I finally stopped teasing, she said, I'm going to be brave for 10 seconds. If you ever want to try this, not now, not until you stop shaking, you can say so. I won't let you fall. Then she changed the subject, like she hadn't set down a key and walked away. I didn't answer for weeks. I tested my capacity for trust like an engineer testing a bridge after an earthquake. I watched for hairline fractures. I learned that trust, when it returns, is a bird that lands, startles, circles, and lands again. One day I realized the bird had been on my shoulder for a while. We called the first date a non-date, because humility is easier than hope. It looked exactly like friendship except for the part where my body warmed at the way she tucked hair behind her ear and then didn't apologize for taking up space. She had always kept a dignified distance while I was married. Never even a poetic line break too near me. That mattered. When I was free, she stepped forward once. I stepped forward once. That was enough. We talked about everything. My triggers, her boundaries, the way silence could scare me, and how she could hold it without filling it with noise. I learned the choreography of reassurance that doesn't become apology. She learned how to touch my arm in crowds so I wouldn't start scanning exits. We were not fixing each other. We were building a room where both of us could lay down what we carried. Every so often, I'd see two women at a checkout with the same jawline, and my chest would go cold and then warm. I learned to label cans of fear and stack them on a shelf. This is my history, not my prophecy. It passes that I keep circling back to the beginning because the ending makes the beginning look different. We met in a bookstore with uneven floors where the owner shelved poetry by mood instead of alphabet. Mia reached for the same slim book I did and said, without looking up, "You take it." I only came in here to be the kind of person who reads. This. It was a joke that confessed and deflected at once. I said, "Great, we can co-sign the lie," and followed her to the register. We walked out into early spring air that smelled like thawed dirt and fresh promises. She wore a green sweater, the exact color of the little plants that bully through sidewalk cracks. I remember that because later, when Calder showed me dry cleaner records, green cashmere, ticket number I could recite by heart, I felt the day rewind and replay with new captions. She met my parents at a backyard dinner where my mother overcooked salmon, and my father brought out the good plates anyway. My mother hugged Mia with both hands and stepped back to look properly, like she was checking for damage from the world. "You seem steady," my mother said, which is the closest she gets to poetry. Mia laughed and handed her flowers that matched the napkins. The next morning, my mother texted me, simply, "Keep her." I saved it. I still have it, and I still don't know what to do with it. The first time Mia told me her boundary, we were sitting in a parked car watching rain turn the windshield into 1,000 unmade decisions. She said she wanted to wait, that she had her reasons, that if I needed something else I should go find it cleanly. I said I could wait forever and meant it in that moment the way young people mean forever when they see a horizon and call it proof. She touched the glass with her fingertip and traced a circle. Later, I'd see that circle in hotel mirrors and Calder's photos and wonder whether a gesture can be a family heirloom. When Calder and I first spoke to the aunt, she answered the door with a look like she had woken up already braced. Her house smelled like old paper and lemon cleaner. She made tea in chipped cups and did not drink hers. She answered questions the way people do when they know the law of unintended consequences by heart. "Those girls only had each other," she said. And then, softer, "And sometimes, that's not for the best." She didn't say Lena's name until I did. When I asked if Mia had ever brought me up, she said, "You were kind," and then wouldn't say more. Kind is such a small word to carry what I needed it to. Calder worked like gravity, patient, inevitable. He did a small stakeout once, which I didn't know about until later because he refused to turn me into a character in my own worst show. He parked across from a hotel that rents by the hour and by the lie, camera down, eyes up. He watched a woman in a hood hurry inside and emerge an hour later with the hood off, hair adjusted, face relaxed the way a person's face gets after performance, whether that performance is a board meeting or a stranger's bed. From his angle, he couldn't swear it was Mia, only that it was someone whose bones had read the same instruction manual. He didn't use that photo. He said, "You didn't need it. You already had enough." Enough is a terrible word, heavy, and light at once that I confronted Mia more directly once before the final blast. It was at a park where we'd picnicked our first summer. She was tracing the grass with the side of her sandal. I said I felt a draft in our house, and I needed to know if a window was open or a wall had moved. She didn't ask for definitions. She said, "I don't want to lose you." And then every sentence after that was shaped like an apology without the noun in it. I wanted to hand her the noun, to make it easy to carry. I didn't. A blue kite went up and came down 3 times. Because the wind couldn't decide. We went home and ate leftovers and pretended we were better at flying than we were. When the paperwork started, there were meetings in glass rooms that made everyone look like ghosts of themselves. My lawyer, a woman with a voice like a level table, asked me to practice sentences without anger because anger makes juries listen to the wrong part. I wrote a letter I didn't send to Mia, the kind you fold too carefully because the paper knows when you lie. I wrote, "You can be a whole person in one life. You don't have to split to survive. Then I didn't send it because I realized I wasn't writing to her. I was writing to the girl she had been, and time doesn't deliver there. Every bureaucratic step came with a human one I didn't anticipate. I had to tell our neighbor why our spare key would no longer be under the turtle statue. I had to switch the utilities on a Tuesday and explain to a cheerful person on the phone why there would be no cosigner. I had to sit at the DMV with a ticket number and think about names and how they hang on you even when you take them off. Therapy entered like a quiet roommate and started washing dishes I'd been leaving in the sink for years. The therapist asked me to describe the moment I knew. I said, "Which one?" And she said, "The first one you can't laugh away." I talked about the coffee, the playlists, the scar that vanished, the tomato, the hug that held too long. She said, "You were doing math without numbers." I said, "I was praying with spreadsheets." We both smiled at the same time, and it felt like a small victory. The day after the windows, I learned how glass gets replaced. A man named Victor measured every frame with a tape that had permanent marker notes along the edge, reminders written during other jobs. He worked fast and careful while telling me about his mother's empanadas and the way winter breaks people who don't know it's coming. Harper arrived halfway through with coffee and pastries and a way of standing that makes the space feel held. She asked Victor if he needed anything. He said he needed me to sit down because hovering makes sawdust nervous. I sat. Harper sat. We watched someone make a broken thing whole in the visible way that I kept meaning to throw away the last of Mia's things. 2 sweaters, a cookbook she never used, a bottle of perfume I'd convinced myself was my favorite. But grief is inventory. Work. You pick up every item and decide if it's a memory or a lie. I boxed the sweaters for donation. I returned the cookbook to the store because the receipt was still tucked inside like a dare. The perfume I opened, smelled once, and poured down the sink. The drain made a sound like a small storm. I ran water until I trusted my house again. Harper and I did not so much start dating as start telling the truth slowly. She told me she hates most rooftop bars because heights make her think about choices. I told her I hate January because everything feels like a dare I didn't take. She said she wanted to go slow enough that the past couldn't hitch a ride fast. I said I wanted to be seen as a person and not a plot twist. On our third not date, we bought groceries together and argued affectionately about strawberries in winter on principle. We made dinner and ate it at my tiny table, and then washed dishes without music, and I realized calm has a sound that I learned that forgiveness is not a door you walk through once, but a hallway with many doors, most of which lead to rooms without chairs. Some days I open the door labeled anger and let myself sit for 10 minutes. Some days I open the door labeled distance and stay the whole afternoon. On the best days I open the door labeled ordinary and lose track of time there. Harper asked me, gently, what I wanted our next season to look like. I told her I wanted small rituals with big meaning. To learn her coffee order without notes. To fix what breaks before it turns into a problem we live around. To hold hands in public like we're not performing anything for anyone. She said she wanted a life where we could both be tired and still be kind. We wrote those down, not a contract, just coordinates, and taped them inside the cabinet with the mugs that I keep thinking about, that blue kite at the park, the one that kept lifting and falling. Some loves are like that. Gorgeous when the wind is right, uncooperative when it isn't. More work than joy if you keep pretending a breeze is a promise. I'm not ashamed that I tried to fly it. I'm relieved I learned to let the string go. Asterisk here is the truest thing I can say without decoration. I don't need a perfect ending. I need true days. I need mornings where the coffee is wrong, but the company is right. I need nights where the only glass breaking is ice in the sink after we rinse cups. I need a life that doesn't ask me to choose between daylight and midnight because the people in it know how to live both honestly. If you are standing in your kitchen counting soup cans to keep from sliding down the wall, you're not alone. Find your Ethan. Find your Calder. Say yes when your Harper knocks with soup. Ask the ant the questions you're afraid to ask. Let the window guys in. Tape your new coordinates in the cabinet. Buy ridiculous popcorn. Laugh when the movie tries too hard. Walk out into the almost navy sky and make a promise you can actually keep. I will look closely. I will leave when leaving is love. I will try again until trying is living, not surviving. That I wrote here one last time, because stories deserve endings even if life refuses them. If you're reading for revenge, I don't have it to give. The twins are gone from my life. No DMs. No apologies with knives in them. Just the memory of glass and the knowledge that a platform closed a door. That's enough that if you're reading. For a moral, I don't trust easy lessons anymore. But I've earned a few truths. Love without curiosity isn't love. It's worship, and worship is just a prettier name for not looking closely. When the floor tilts, don't insist you're fine and keep carrying the tray. Set it down. Sit. Figure out what moved. Sometimes it's only your fear. Sometimes the house is rearranging itself without your consent. The person who feeds you soup and does not require performance while you relearn how to be a person. That's a kind of love you can build with. Don't make them carry your house for you. But don't ignore the fact that they brought lumber when you had none. I don't want to be the twin wife guy forever. I'm the man who finally knows he takes his coffee with milk and who trusts himself. Enough to walk into a movie where nothing bad happens, holding a hand that has been steady for a long time. I'm going to buy popcorn the size of a small planet and laugh at stupid jokes and walk out into night air that smells like rain on warm pavement. Which is to say, like possibility, if you needed someone to say it's not over for you, hear it. It's not over. Sit with the mess until you can stand. Ask better questions. Accept better answers. Start again. I did. I am.